All right, this is Federalist 16, Part 4. Before I go on, I want to remind you, C-SPAN, this website, has the best resources for you to learn about the American civilization. So make sure you go to this website, look at the series, look at American writers, American presidents, the part about the courts. Of course, you can do this as your English improves, as you just read through the Federalist Papers and watch some of these videos, but this is a wonderful resource. Okay? I will go to paragraph that I stopped at. To this reasoning, it may perhaps be objected that if any state should be disaffected to the authority of the Union, it could at any time obstruct the execution of the laws and bring the matter to the same issue of force with the necessity of which the opposite scheme is approached. When you hear the word scheme here, it doesn't have the negative meaning it does today. This is more like a plan. The plausibility of this objection will vanish the moment we advert to the essential difference between a mere non-compliance and a direct and active resistance. Non-compliance and direct and active resistance are written in capital letters. If the interposition of the state legislatures be necessary to give effect to a measure of the Union, they have only not to act or to act evasively, and the measure is defeated. Now you will hear the word interposition as you start studying the American history right around, at first, a decade after this was written, and then gradually as we approach the Civil War. This is when the states say, no, you federal government, you cannot deal with this thing here in the state, with that thing. We're going to interpose, or we're going to stand between you and our citizens. We are sovereign. We are a sovereign nation. And unfortunately, they read their Federalist Papers wrong, or their understanding of America was wrong. This is the South before the Civil War. But you will get there, and you will hear this word a little bit more. If the interposition of the state legislature be necessary to give effect to a measure of the Union, they have only not to act or act evasively. Again, not to act and act evasively are written with capital letters. And the measure is defeated. This neglect of duty may be disguised under affected but unsubstantial provisions so as not to appear, and of course not to excite any alarm in the people for the safety of their constitution. The state leaders may even make a merit of their surreptitious invasions of it on the ground of some temporary convenience, exemption, or advantage. But if the execution of the laws of the national government should not require the intervention of the state legislatures, if they were to pass into immediate operation upon the citizens themselves, the particular governments could not interrupt their progress without an open and violent exertion of an unconstitutional power. No omissions or evasions would answer the end. They would be obliged to act, and in such a manner as would leave no doubt that they had encroached on the national rights. An experiment of this nature would always be hazardous in the face of a constitution in any degree competent to its own defense, and of a people enlightened enough to distinguish between a legal exercise and an illegal usurpation of authority. The success of it would require not merely a factious majority in the legislature, but the concurrence of the courts of justice and of the body of the people. If judges were not embarked in a conspiracy with the legislature, they would pronounce the resolutions of such a majority to be contrary to the supreme law of the land, unconstitutional, and void. Okay, we're going to pause here. This is the first time that the important issue of judicial review, judicial independence by extension, because when you say judicial review, for it to be worth anything, that means you have to have a justice system, a judiciary, a court system that is independent, that is not scared of the other branches of government. We've talked about this before. This is the first time he mentions it directly. It's an idea that comes to be known as judicial review, where the federal judges, or judges in general, but especially the federal judges, look at a law that has been passed, let's say, at the state legislatures or even in Congress, and say, this is not constitutional. It contradicts the fundamental law, the basic law of the country, so it's null and void. It will not hold. It is not good. It's unconstitutional. So here is the first time that Hamilton brings up this issue in the Federalist Papers. He brings it up later, especially in Federalist number 78. But right now, this is the first time he brings this up. And since I told you about judicial review and judicial independence, let's just for the remaining 1 or 2 minutes talk about the most important aspects of a good government. You have to remember, anyone who holds power can be corrupted. If I hold power, even though I trust myself now, but when I hold power, I can get corrupted because I'm a human being. So you set up the system thinking that anyone with power will be corrupted. So you have to have, or will or can be corrupted. So you have to have division of power or separation of powers. You have to have a judiciary, an executive branch, and a legislative branch. Now you have to have checks and balances. You cannot 100% separate all these three from each other. You have to have them check each other and balance each other. Okay. For example, judge's salary cannot be reduced. That gives the judge an independence. They don't have to think, if I vote this way, they will keep my salary or they will raise my salary. But if I don't vote the way they want me to, or if I don't judge the way they want me to, they will cut down my salary. So he's not independent. He's dependent on them. So they are kept, one of the ways they are kept independent is by keeping their salaries, at least not letting their salaries lower. But at the same time, if a judge does something unethical, illegal, then he can be impeached. So the legislature will check and balance the judge. And in the same way, the executive, the president in the American system, will nominate a judge, but that judge automatically nominate a person to be a judge, but that person doesn't automatically become a judge. And the Senate has to okay. Okay? Senate has to okay that nominee. So you check and balance this way. And then judicial independence, checks and balances, a representative government where you know at certain intervals, certain known intervals, you can gather and vote people in or out of office. The time of the election cannot be arbitrary. In other words, you cannot say one day, okay, 2 years from now we'll have an election, and then next time you say 5 years from now. No, these all have to be set way in advance for everybody. So keep those in mind, and we will come back and finish Federalist number 16 in part 5.